Hi, my name is Feng Chen Hui. I'm a violinist, violist, composer, and arranger. Um, Everybody's staying home, me included. Um, Instead of feeling worried and depressed, I'd rather just do something productive. So here I would like to do a series of videos about my take on several issues. I did a little survey on my Instagram account, and I got a few questions, a few requests of topics that people would like me to talk about. I see two questions about writing for strings. One is about the do's and don'ts writing for strings, and the other one is how to write for string quartet. Um, I would like to separate these two because it's a very big topic for me, and I think a short video wouldn't be able to cover everything. So to answer the first question is a guide for composers writing for strings, the do's and don'ts. Well, first of all, I would emphasize that I'm as a writer, I'm largely self-taught. Um, I guess we can all agree that we are all self-taught at some point in life. In the end of the day, it's our experience that actually teaches us a lot more than we can study at school. The only composition course that I remember taking was in my undergrad in University of Putra, Malaysia, doing one semester of composition, and that was it. So the rest was just me messing around on the paper, noodling on the piano. It's the same for writing for strings. Even though I'm a string player, I write according to what I know about those instruments and according to what I hear and what I observe playing in an orchestra or a chamber ensemble. I try to remember what composers write, what kind of lines do they write for certain instruments, and how do they sound like when they all come together. So I would like to say, for the do's of writing for strings is to really do study the old masters. Really do study the old masters. From from I don't know, Monteverdi, all the way down to Bach, Haydn, Mozart, all the way down to I don't know, Strauss, Mahler, Wagner, and Bartok, and even further, just keep studying the masters because they have spent their whole lives perfecting their arts, not only writing for strings but for other things too. So they have a very broad scope of what they want to do with the strings when it comes to different context. So I think that would be the best way to do it. Um, what I do is sometimes I would, for example, if I listen to a Bartok string quartet, for example, I would I would just read through the score with the recording just to know how certain writing sounds like. That's really really important. So that's one way to study the old masters. Um, that's my I'm using my own way to do it. And there's also another way. I mean, I love listening to a lot of composers like newer composers like Johnny Greenwood, or people slightly older but still hard to get to get their scores because it's so recent and it's not public domain. I can't just download it on IMSLP, so I have to listen to it and then try to imitate what they write. Try to imitate what they write, or try to even transcribe what they write. I don't really do transcribing that much, but I try to remember the sound that they have, and then I try to imitate what they write. When I compose my own music, I would start writing a passage that kind of sounds like that. For example, sounds like the score to "There Will Be Blood" or something like that. Of course, it wouldn't be 100%, but the process of trying to figure out how to write, how to create that kind of sound with the limited number of instruments I have, or any given situation that I have, is very fruitful because it's not always successful, but you learn so much more from your own mistakes. As for composers that you can get your fingers on their scores. Try to check out the score from the library, or borrow it from a friend. Don't look at it first. If you really like a passage, try to write it out. Try to transcribe it, write it down on a piece of paper, you know, and then compare what you wrote with the actual score and see what's the difference between your transcription and the score. Like, do they use first violin for the entire melody, or do they separate? Do they cut the melody into a few parts so that first and second violins are exchanging their positions, you know, playing accompaniment and playing the melody. You know, there are often parts like that, but people couldn't really tell because it sounds like one line, right? So this is also another thing. Things that composers do that you don't really realize they're doing, but it sounds so good. It's just because they do subtle things like that. So that has to do with orchestration. So write your own score of whatever passage that you like from a recording, and then compare it with a score. There are also instances that you don't really understand why the composers have to write like that instead of writing in the way you transcribed it. When you can't figure it out, it's easy. Make some friends, you know. Look for your string player friends, preferably the very very experienced ones. Just ask them, hey, why do you think the composer wants to write like this? I often have a lot of composer friends who come and ask me questions and even ask me to play through their music, even though it's not written for me. And I'm always happy to help because it gives me a lot of insight as well of how other people are writing. So yeah, do listen, do transcribe, and do ask. Those are the do's. And also, really, sometimes I get my jazz friends coming over to ask me questions like, "Yo, man, I've never written for strings. You know, what are the subtleties? What are the things that I should watch out for? You know, what's the secret to writing for strings?" I mean, just write it. You know, just write it. If you're used to writing for horns, for example, fine, just write it that way. Just orchestrate it that way first. Start from where you are, or whatever skills you have already. And then from there on, show it to your string player friends, or your teachers, or your friends who are composers who are more experienced in writing for strings. Show them, and they will tell you what makes sense and what doesn't. It's very easy. Sometimes answers are all around us, which is our friends. Well, in this situation, it's answer is over on Zoom or FaceTime. You can ask your friends, but you know what I'm saying, right? The other thing is, if you ever have a chance to sit in with an orchestra, a string orchestra, a string quartet, or whatever chamber ensemble, if you can sit in the rehearsals, better still if you can sit amongst them, sit inside the orchestra and just experience the sound, you'll understand a lot more. You'll really understand a lot more of how things would work, and how things should sound like, how you should write for certain things. So yeah, so if you get to sit in, I would highly recommend it, because it would help you so much to get the idea of why things are written a certain way, and how players actually execute the written notes. And if you're a string player yourself, right, and you're trying to arrange or compose for strings, I know playing and writing are two different things. So for me, I realized, when I was younger, I always dip myself in the music, in the violin. I always try to find out if my sound is good and everything. But at the same time, I realized that I neglected to hear other people. So I came up with this term, giraffe ears, right? Giraffe, they're really tall, right? And then their ears are way up there. So while you're playing, even though you're playing, your levels right here, your ears are right here, but imagine growing your ears up there, like a periscope. so that you can listen to the whole ensemble like that way, you know, and then you can hear yourself a lot more clearly too in context. Okay, and from there you can understand what's your function in the ensemble or in the orchestra in relation to the other parts in the orchestra. It's so important. So grow some giraffe ears. All right, just grow some giraffe ears. Listen around. It's much better to listen this way than listen from here, because this is too personal. This is too subjective. You want to be a little objective if you want to hear a more broad context, and that's very helpful in terms of writing.